We've got 30 seconds to regroup. Sentry repaired. Yeah.
Hey guys, I wanted to start documenting my impressions of each of these Horde variants as we go along throughout the next year. These variants are great to get, and they can keep us on our toes with diverse means to play Horde, but reviewing the pros and cons of them can help the Coalition with how they're going to approach this in Gears 5. Starting with Juvie Madness, or now that we're in the holiday season, Jingle Juvies, I'll dive right in. If you haven't played Jingle Juvies yet, this mode came out last year for Gearsmas and made several returns throughout 2018 known as Juvie Madness, except Jingle Juvies has every enemy with reindeer antlers on. The mode focuses on giving you a 25 wave set of constant Juvies and trackers. This mode's amazing at showing off the amount of enemies the Gears can throw on screen when you see just these constant wave of Juvies coming at you to tear you to shreds. Alongside of this, your fortifications don't really mean much of anything. Barricades, decoys, and sentries all have one-hit health barriers, and they can go down from the simplest stuff. If one tracker gets nearby and gets an explosion off, it can completely destroy your whole set. And then in boss waves, every 5 waves, you'll get an extra enemy alongside of Juvies, so you'll see Scions, Pouncers, Sentinels, or Guardians will come up and just wreck you asunder. And that one health barrier for all of your fortifications makes boom shots and things like that even more threatening. First things first, this mode is great for scouts, soldiers, and heavies. If scouts can stay alive, their role generally tends to be a live decoy since, well, decoys don't really have much value in this mode. And then just picking up piles of like 50 pieces of power is one of those incredibly satisfying things. Just the sound of it all is so gratifying. And as far as the build, you can throw on like Brawler, Health Boost, and then Dodge and or Health Regeneration Boost. Both are pretty helpful. And you just run amongst the crowd of Juvies and trackers, and it's fun. Soldiers and heavies, simply put, they blow stuff up. Multi-kills ensue, soldiers do great with grenade builds. It's fun to unload like a full magazine boost size magazine into a giant wave of Juvies, and it's incredibly fun. And heavies just destroy with anything that they generally do. I mean, that's what a heavy does. You blow stuff up, you get to blow up more stuff in this mode. And this is more my opinion. Where it ends up not being as fun is for engineers and snipers. And I'm actually also going to throw scouts in here as well. Surviving ends up being really difficult for scouts going wave 16 and onward. Even with dodge, even with health regeneration boost, I've noticed it's a challenge to try and just run away from trackers and like set trackers off and then just sprint out of an area, or like make sure you're not too close to sentry guns that they're going to blow up a tracker right near you. Trackers are your worst enemies. Explosive damage is your worst enemy, since Thick Skin decided to be a heavy class card and not something that a scout can use. So that's like your kryptonite in all of this. And then the crux of this all defense-wise is, with heavies having thick skin and last stand, that's also not enough to really withstand the amount of damage that a big horde of Juvies will put on you, alongside of having all of the tracker explosive damage still stings. As far as being a sniper, it's a little bit obvious why it's frustrating. Juvies are really hard to headshot, or at least their movement is so wild you can't guarantee it anywhere near as simply put as like in normal Horde against Scion and your normal Swarm and everything like that. But it can just be tricky to headshot them, as well as then sitting there, you're just getting single body shots all day. You can't really get M-bars off of the field, and you can't use the long shot all that well unless you are amazing at headshotting Juvies and getting explosive headshots. You've basically just got the Marksa. However, come the boss wave, and especially against like Scion boss waves, you end up being the most important player. As well, if you do throw on called shot and radar ping so you can apply more damage for your heavies and for everybody in your class, that's also pretty important going into waves 15 plus. But then just aggressively going for the headshots down range against Scions to help defend all of the fortifications. So, like every 5 waves you become an incredibly important person. And then in between that, you're just doing whatever you can. And engineers, I would say at least the plus side is whenever you have your build and your fortification running well, and you've got those angles and everything's working out. When you're getting away with it, the engineer is quite fun, but it would be the most frustrating just because of the limitation in builds that you have. You can't build barriers or decoys, and it cuts your normal flexibility down so heavily. And most times it just devolves into a sentry fest where so long as you can spam a whole bunch of sentries in a backline and make sure this sentry's covering the other sentry is covering the other sentry and just kind of having a pile of sentries in the back, that's mainly what you build. And then if you have the only thing you can really do otherwise is building weapons lockers. Since they have full health, you can use those as like pseudo decoys. Sometimes they attract enemies, sometimes not. They don't attract anywhere near as much as say like a decoy does or a sentry gun hat does, but they can still be a full health block, a clot in the way of like a certain choke point that you can utilize. You can also do this with turrets as well, and you can still utilize some good turret builds in some setups. It's just that's bloody expensive, and whenever everything's breaking down on you, it's a little bit harder to keep those maintained. Still viable, you can still roll with turrets, it's just there's nowhere near as much as you get flexibility wise with having everything available from your normal Horde. But I will say all in all that this mode is a fun and a unique challenge, and it's refreshing to have this in matchmaking after having Boss Rush where we couldn't get any experience, quite frankly, if we needed to find a few random players. So it's nice to have a 1 through 25 in matchmaking that isn't just Horde Light, so I really do appreciate that. Now, a lot of people like to give impressions of something and really have no ideas going forward, just like, I like this and I don't like that, and just fix it. I'm going to try and talk a little bit more going forward into Gears 5 or into the next year of Gears of War 4. I want to give these suggestions. I'm struggling to figure out the best course of action to remedy this mode in particular with Gears 4. This might not necessarily be the case with other reviews and other sessions. I'm just throwing it out there that this one I'm struggling a little bit with right out of the gate. I'm certainly curious about how the mode will be in a bit more of a plain Jane setup with, say, with barricades and decoys. Immediate thoughts think that this would be overpowered, but then as I keep thinking about it, I'm really not so sure about that. If you watch how Juvies devour a full health boosted decoy in just normal Horde because they hit rapidly and they just focus so hard on tearing everything down, I don't know if that would necessarily be a bad thing to give them full health. Alongside of that, while a lot could die to barricades, throwing so many of those Juvies on screen would just be like melting those barricades, even with barricade health, even with fortification health. I think, honestly, giving us maybe if you want to call it a different mode and give us full health on all of our stuff and just let us flex that out for a little bit, I think there's a lot of entertainment that could come from that. Maybe make it not as novelty of a Horde variant of sorts, and we could actually have a few more strategies around it. If anything, I think it would be worth experimenting with just so each match of this mode doesn't have to turn into a Sentry Fest. Not that the Sentry Fest, if done thoughtfully, prevents others from getting kills. It just seems like a lot of us don't enjoy having to have sentries on sentries on sentries to stay alive. As I'm thinking about it, perhaps it has something to do with the sheer maintenance that sentries require, even with sentry capacity, and just trying to keep everything upheld. And then there is, of course, if you don't have the most thoughtful engineer, you do have a lot of times with the kill hogging, where the engineer at the end of a match has 1,200 kills, and the next person up is the heavy that has 125 kills. And, you know, there's everybody else that's on the team that can't do jack because 18 to 20 sentries in the back are taking care of all the work. And unless you want to stand out in no man's land and take the chance to try and get some kills, it's not going to bode well for you. And as me being an engineer personally, I really don't like being the kill hog anymore. I used to a lot in 2017, which anybody that play with me on stream can definitely attest to. But I've really, as time goes on, I've really enjoyed just setting my teammates up for success as an engineer. Not hogging kills, having enough defenses that if they fall or they have struggles, I've got their back. But I don't want to be the guy that's taking the limelight from everybody and everything. I like helping my teammates do well. And really looking ahead and pushing into Gears 5, I think this can best be remedied conceptually by having more diversity in what we can build. This is kind of a broad scope for Horde as a whole, but This lends itself to an entire video to talk about what different type of fortifications we can get in Gears 5, but by even just throwing the label of more on this brings a lot more potential to Jingle Juvies. I know I talk a lot in stream about Gears 5. I would like to see walls of sorts, not to make references politically, but like some form of wall, like we had boom shields in Gears 2 or something of the sort that we can deploy. And again, I want to brainstorm this for a bit and make a full video discussing fortifications and what I would like to see. That would at least be my two main pieces of feedback that I'd be curious to see, is to see if full health barricades and decoys would make a difference, bringing those back into the fold, as well as then looking into Gears 5, having more fortifications, and as well, as I will also talk about, more class diversity and everything will of course make this mode a bit more interesting in Gears 5 as well, which again, another video that I'll talk about, and we'll go from there. I'm curious to know what you guys think on that as well. To start wrapping this up a little bit, so long as the team can stay safe, the biggest thing with Jingle Juvies / Juvie Madness that is a plus about this mode is killing these big waves of little critters is satisfying as all get out. When you land that explosive headshot as a sniper amidst a pile of Juvies, or throwing that arcing boom shot out of the trail that your scout's leaving. Like, you know, your scout's running and there's maybe like a second or two later just these wave of Juvies coming after him, World War Z style. It's awesome. And you just land a boom shot perfectly and get like 7-8 kills. It's amazing. The initial spawn in after planting max grenades out as a soldier, and you just watch the kill feed with your name show up with everything. Picking up hundreds of pieces of power per wave as a scout, and just watching an onslaught of enemies crash against your fortifications as an engineer. All stuff that deserves its proper praise in this mode. Where it starts to lose its fun and novelty is when an engineer's build has to be sentry focused. The frustration gets real when a tracker slips by and destroys one of those sentries and it just breaks the floodgates open and there's not much you can do about it. Alongside of that, insane difficulty means just about every class gets down instantly from a single tracker explosion, or from about like 2 to 3 Juvie hits based off of if you have any defense cards and stuff like that, and those stack up really fast when a group of them swarms in, like I said, from a one sentry going down and then everything floodgates. Then when you get down, the chances of survival is really slim, with Juvies just being those instant executioners on Insane. It's one of those modes where everything has to be going near perfectly to succeed, versus if you get modes like Horde Mania, Horde Frenzy, and just your good old-fashioned normal Horde, your fortifications don't have to be the best place. The build on your team can be flexible, and you can get away with it and it'll still work. You have a little bit more personal comfort of sorts. I mean, like, heavies and soldiers can get away with whatever they want in this mode, but still, everybody else can't. But overall, this mode is fun. It's a relief to have a 25 wave set for matchmaking again, and the Juvie slaughter is great. I believe if we can find a bit more leeway to work with in this mode, or if the Coalition gives us a bit more leeway, this can have a much longer and much more enjoyable shelf life as a mode. If they're looking to bring it to Gears 5, the diversity in what we can build and how we can save ourselves will be the key if this mode makes or breaks. I want to know what your guys' impressions are of Jingle Juvies now, and this mode has been out for a little while. Each time it comes around, Juvie Madness and Jingle Juvies for the holidays. I'm down on more advice on what you found that works as well. I've also just recently heard of a no engineer build that did pretty decently, where everybody just built weapons lockers for the clodding up major runways and stuff like that, and that ended up working. But if you guys want to join me in some Horde, I stream it on Twitch on Monday, Tuesday, and Friday, starting at about 5:30 to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard. I do a stream earlier, and so whenever that finishes up. And I run for about 3 to 4 hours. So send me a message on Xbox, and I'd love to have you in. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay thirsty, my friends. Luckily, he built enough sentries that we just maintained. We just kept surviving through all the death. I couldn't do much of anything because I was just trying to keep people revived and keep people rolling. When you just me. Go away, bad man. Go away. Go away. Get out of here. Get out of my life.
Anyone else?
Oh, we did it.